Ahoy! Outpost Rush is getting a new test map this season that will become a permanent map in the future, the Coral Divide, and Ginny from New World Buddy has data mined the map, and we can see various versions of here real quick. We'll talk about everything here in detail, of course. And this map is extremely interesting. Now, I learned about this through a video from Male Oreo. I will link that in the description as well. That's how I originally found out. And I found some more interesting stuff that I thought was worth talking about. So we're going to begin with this image here, which gives us a pretty good overview of the entire map. You can see this is a pretty big map overall, but it doesn't seem to span in the same way as the current Outpost Rush map does. And that is mainly due to a very different layout. So the first thing we're going to show you here is the locations of various important assets, so to speak, on the map. S are the starting points, the spawn points. P are the points that you need to contest. And C is the corrupted portal. Now, what you will immediately notice here is this layout is very, very different from the old map where you'd have one spawn point around here and the other one around here. Instead, we are now going all the way to the right, all the way to the left, but with a relatively small distance between the spawns overall and a point right in the middle between them. And then the other points are more off to the side, and you kind of need to branch off with a separate team probably to take care of those points. And then obviously the PvE is happening elsewhere as well. So very interesting layout just based on that alone, but it goes deeper than that, literally deeper, because you can see these cracks in between that don't really have any texture in them yet, and they're not going to look like that in the final version, but rather closer to this. There will be some rivers in between, and there will be surface that you can walk on, and you can see some stairs in various areas here where you can probably go up especially, and you can probably drop down in many places, but only a few spots where you can get out again. And that will likely mean that people will be farming under the map, because if you look at the layout here closely, there are these dotted lines, for example, under the center point, and then also here on the sides, which seem to be tunnel systems that get you all across the map, including one that starts from up here and then goes into the middle, and then maybe also out of the bottom. That's not quite clear. I think so. Maybe there's two entry points to this middle point. And we already know that they've said you will farm resources under the ground or fighting the mobs in the divide itself, which can be used for various things. So that's likely what the lower floors are going to be for primarily, whereas the top floor is more for the actual contesting of the points. And we already know as well that there are bridges that you can build with resources to access certain areas quicker. It looks like that's likely going to be these top bridges here towards the corrupted portal, which would mean it doesn't affect the PvP itself quite as much, but rather affects the PvE component of the map. But then there's also some bridges down here, this bridge and this bridge, which I think you would be building as well, because they seem to have this similar design. Looks like these will be buildable as well. So there are certain connections that here on this part seem to be more relevant for PvP. So the PvEers will be involved there as well. I personally not the biggest fan still of the whole PvE aspect of Outpost Rush in general, but it makes some degree of sense in this context, I would say, or in how the map is generally laid out and designed. Now, if we look at the 3D map, then we get a bit of a different visual in terms of how the whole thing looks. I've increased for all of these maps, by the way, the brightness and contrast significantly, so we can actually see what's going on, since it is not shaded yet. The designs are not shaded yet, so they will look more like this in-game than the data mined versions, I think. And we can see some very obvious things here. For example, if we look at the spawn points, we see the spawn walls here where you can't go through. We have that on the left side, which is kind of this village. So basically, in a sense, the defenders, because then on the other side, you have this ship with the walls over here. And these are, I guess, the attackers in a sense, even though that doesn't really matter in Outpost Rush. You can also see there's some assets missing here. There's going to be like some pathway up from the ship. I guess some wooden build-ups or something based on what these little buildings that are around here. So it's not completely finished, just what's in the file so far. And then down here, we could see that there is the bridge here again, not built in this case. There's this blue glow. So once this is built, you can basically like head down here and straight to the point. But initially, you'll have to go a longer pathway. You'd probably actually go through the middle. I'm guessing you can't actually go over here. Maybe you can. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you can kind of make your way through here and over there, but that will make the bridge somewhat pointless. But there looks like some wall over here as well. So I'm assuming that you actually have to go all the way around here, almost into the middle, at least, and then go down here to get to these contested points. Whereas with this bridge, you take a quick shortcut. And obviously, the other team can do that on their side as well with the bridge here. So very interesting in terms of build-up. Again, we see the other bridges up here as well. And what we can also see here is very much the corrupted portal, how it's set up. So that's likely not going to be the major objective, if we're going by the current map at least, unless they've decided that now that will be the main contested objective. But instead we'll probably have some form of boss under the map. I don't know if it's going to be the Baroness, so it's going to be something else instead, but that's my guess. Maybe something that's more thematic for this map in particular. We have very nice vegetation, I gotta say, as well. Like, we have got a lot of trees and stuff going on here. I think this looks, in my opinion, nicer than the current map. It's obviously themed like the PvP area, at least the parts down here. But generally, like a Cutlass Keys vibe, I would say. But I think that's a bit less generic than the current Outpost Rush map now. So we've seen the current Outpost Rush map long enough. What's very interesting about the layout here that we can especially see on this map is that there's definitely spots that are specifically set up for sniping. Because you can see that they specifically put up bridges up here, so you can go over the top here, and you can basically sit here with a musket or a bow and snipe people that come into the middle. Very interesting that they make this very intentional design, because it's going to be relatively hard to get them, of course, because you have to go all the way up to get to them. But on the other hand, the map in itself is a lot less open than previous maps. You can't just stand back here and snipe into the middle. You have to actually get somewhat close. So you could assign some assassin players, some melee schizo players or whatever, or some medium players, to just contest this area as well, so the range players can't sit over there. It's probably going to be some sniping matches between these two sides as well. So it could be interesting. At the same time, it's relatively exposed with not a lot of rocks to hide behind once you're up there. We see similar layouts down here where you have some elevation again, but nothing that puts you in like a super safe spot, rather just a slightly safe spot. So I think this could be very, very interesting. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. Now, there are more areas that we haven't talked about. If we look at this spot in particular, this is the center point, and we can actually have a look inside. There is one image of that so far, where we can see basically a very standard layout for a control point, but also some differences. So you have your storage over here, you have your, well, I'm guessing this is a shop over here, and then you have your tent, your command tent over here, so that's all normal. You have your doors. Based on how this is laid out, there's probably going to be 3 doors. There should be another one on this side. And what's interesting about the doors is they seem to be blue and glowing blue. It might be that this is just some weird glitch from enhancing the brightness, but everything else has a pretty accurate color, so I'm assuming they're actually blue, which would make me think that the gates indicate their level now, basically by the color. So these would be like not just basic wooden doors, but rather the name that escaped, Wordwood doors is the one that I was thinking of, which have that blue glow. Could be pretty cool if they do that, just a visual element. But obviously from a PvP perspective as well, this is way more closed off than the current any point really, where you can just snipe through the doors, but it doesn't even look like there's a way to get in from the top, or like you can't sit on the sides as a range player and kite around. You're kind of in here when you're in here. And that's going to be a very tough choice for many players to make if you want to take that amount of risk. Of course, you have an additional door to get out of, but once you're caught here as a range player, you're going to have a big problem, I think. So again, it seems like they are somewhat changing the way that ranged melee is played. Maybe there's actually a way to like climb up here somewhere and get through the cracks. I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like it so far at least. You can see the front entrance is here, and I think we can see the side entrance here, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, that's just gonna be one of the buildings here, the one that will mainly be fought over, which I think is cool. I think it's fun that you can just run straight in and you have this immediate clash in the middle that seems to be a lot less distance covered than before. It looks like you're probably still going to mount up in the distance, unless they're not even allowing mounts on this map, which could also be possible, because again, it doesn't look that big. But once you're in here, it looks like if you die here and respawn, you can pretty quickly come back, but then the more important points to contest are actually going to be the ones further down south. You can actually kind of see the rings here as well, by the way, since those will be, well, especially if you have the bridge, they will be more accessible on your side, especially. So this is probably going to be held by this team most of the time, right side on right side, left side on left side, and then the middle is more contested, and then obviously try to make plays in between. Also going to be interesting where exactly you can cross here from one point to the other. These rooftops and stuff don't look like you can go through here. This definitely doesn't look like you can go through here. So you may have to go around here. Maybe you can go around here. This looks like it might be just a roof. I think this might be actually a pathway. So you could probably go from here, here, and then end up here somewhere. But then again, you also have to keep in mind there is the underground layout here, where maybe you can somewhere utilize exactly that and just go underground and then pop back up underground on the other side. Looks like there's some stairs here as well, so it should be possible. And based on what we're seeing here, it might also be possible that we can get into some buildings. There's another map that I have not shown you yet. This is the layout map here. Somebody put the two layers on top of each other. And if we're matching that here, well, we have the circle here. No, it looks like this is still... Maybe this is under the building. Like maybe there is an underground in the building itself. Because this place does not look covered. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, but either way, looks interesting as well. So a lot of very, very different design choices they've done here. Obviously the river as well. I'm not sure if we're going to be swimming in the river or if you're going to be walking through the river. Swimming could be interesting insofar that would make sense for the whole swim mechanic being introduced, that at least it would have a higher degree of purpose. But at the same time, if you're fighting mobs down there, that could be a bit annoying. So we'll see. But I do think that in general, there is some good potential in this map. And I think it's actually pretty exciting. I really don't know how it's going to turn out. Of course, there's probably going to be plenty of bugs in the beginning. They're going to have a lot of things to figure out. It is put in a test mode first for a reason, I would say. And it is going to be very interesting how much of a factor PvE is going to be if you have all these bridges that you need to take care of, as well as everything else that previously was in PvE. Or if they maybe have cut down on certain elements as well. I'm not entirely sure, for example, down here, if there will be any of the usual buildable things like shops and whatnot. Or like, not shops, but tents and whatnot, because it's not showing up here in this screenshot at least. I can't really see anything like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could just not be in these assets, could not be loading in or something. So yeah, could be that there are other changes that in other places you will need less resources, so that it's more justified to use the resources for the bridges instead. That is probably going to be a pretty deciding factor in how this map will feel overall. And of course, alongside that, also the question of how important those bridges will be in general. It looks like it might be possible, if we look at the tunnel map here, instead of going over the bridge, you might be able to just go under the map, around here, and then go all the way up, and maybe get out somewhere at the top here. And maybe that's another way to contest the portal. I'm not sure. No, only speculation at this point, but I do think that it definitely looks fun to play so far. And I like that the map is more split up. I think there's going to be a whole lot less zerging between 3 points, but rather you'll have more skirmishes in between, because there's just so many small areas. Like, look at an area like this, for example. It's just like a small spot. If you catch someone, you're just going to have a quick 1v1 and there, and maybe someone else will jump in, or someone will snipe from over there or something. And I think that makes a lot more sense for New World. I think that's a lot more fun than just these constant relative death balls that are closer to what wars are like, whereas this, I think, will in some ways be closer to what maybe 3v3s are like, or some open world PvP is like, with the exception of the center point. I'm sure this center point will be very much focused on bruisery clumps, because again, once you're on the inside, you're probably not going to get out easily as a range, so a lot of that will be dominated by what you more typically see in a war, and then I think everything else is more open to smaller fights, which again, I think is really good. I really like that. I think that would make the map overall more fun. But yeah, that's my overview of this map so far. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon and get early trading tips in return. Thanks again to New World Buddy, and also thanks to Male Oreo for making the first video about this. Will be linked down below. Thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.